A lot of people have asked me, Scotty, how come you still drive your old 94 Toyota Celica? Well, today I'm going to explain why. First, I'm a mechanic. We spend all week fixing other people's cars. The last thing we want to do in our spare time is work on our own cars. That's why I've got a Toyota Celica. Because the Celica's pretty sporty looking, but really, it's just basically a Toyota Corolla in disguise. It's got the same exact engine and the same exact transmission down in here. And I've personally seen Corollas that had 1 million miles on them, so you know the thing's gonna last. And another reason is I'm cheap. I bought this thing for $350 quite a long time ago. It's got 239,000 miles on it now. And the AC still blows cold as can be when you push the button. And it's still got the original AC compressor. Yes, one time I did that to add a little refrigerant, but hey, it's what, 24 years old? So a tiny leak like that's no big deal. I filled it up and it's still blowing cold. That was like 6 years ago. And it's still got the original engine, the original transmission, the original power steering pump. These things were made to last. And even the wheels still look good, but that's a trick. Watch this. These are just AutoZone wheel covers. Behind it are steel wheels. I love steel wheels for one main reason. They can take damage, they're steel. If you hit a puddle or something, you get a little bend in the steel, you can get a hammer and you can mash it right back out again. If you have fancy alloy wheels like this Lexus, you can see there's chinks here. If you hit a big bump and this wheel breaks, these things cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars a piece. But even if you hit a curb with these cheapy AutoZone hubcaps, hey, you can buy another set for practically nothing. And from far away, they look perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with a little facade every now and then. And another advantage of a car like this is, hey, it was a mass-produced car. They made millions of the Corollas. And the Celica, being basically the Corolla parts, you can get parts easily and cheaply just about anywhere, even though the car's 24 years old now. And being a hatchback, comes in handy. Once you take all the covers off and put the seats down, you can then carry a whole bunch of stuff. I put all kinds of lumber and giant screen TVs in this baby. As far as I'm concerned, it may be the perfectly designed car of all time. And since I live in Texas, it may be 24 years old, but no rust. Now, if you move down here with a car that started to rust like my sister-in-law did, then all bets are off, because once rust starts, the humidity of Houston will just eat the car up. She had a Pinto, she brought it down from Buffalo, and after a few years, one day she opened the driver's door and it fell off. So then she drove it a while climbing the passenger door. So since it doesn't rust, what is the point of getting rid of this car? It runs good, gets good gas mileage, has freezing cold air conditioning, and hardly ever breaks down. Now, granted, the front seats did wear out, but look at these beautiful covers that I put on. These covers have been on for like 5 years. They look really well, and they weren't that cheap. I mean, they were like 65 bucks a piece, but hey, it still looks pretty good for an old car. And I put these covers on myself. Just realize if you ever try it, it's not going to look too good for the first few days because they come in a package all scrinched up, but once you stretch them on and they sit in the sun for a few days, hey, they look pretty good. And yes, I did get rid of the crappy Toyota stereo it came with and put in this JVC because it really sounds a lot better. That was 75 bucks well spent. What the heck? And I did put in a pair of CV axles, but what the heck? They were $49 a piece for brand new aftermarket ones, and they're still working fine 6 years later. So now you know why I'm still driving this 94 Celica, even though it has hand crank windows. Today I'm going to talk about why the Toyota Matrix was such a great car. Now I have to say was because they stopped making them. Well, at least theoretically. They were originally made in Cambridge, Ontario. Canadians make very good cars. They ended up being the only place for a while in the world where they made Lexuses, except in Japan. That's how much the Japanese trusted the Canadians. They let them get their flagship Lexuses in Cambridge. They stopped making the Matrixes. Only look at what's out there now. And look at this Toyota Corolla hatchback that Toyota makes. The 2019 Corolla hatchback is just a modern version of that. Just look under the hood of this 2007 Toyota Matrix. It's got a Toyota Corolla 1.8 engine, a Toyota Corolla automatic transmission, Toyota Corolla disc brakes in the front, and Toyota Corolla drum brakes in the back. So basically back in 2007, they could have called this the Toyota Corolla hatchback, but they decided to call it the Matrix for some reason. As I said, what's in a name? Back in the day when they started making them, they called it a sport wagon. It wasn't as long as a regular wagon, but it was more set up for sport. It may not look it, but these things, not only are they quick, but they handle really well. When my wife drove this all the time to work before she got her Lexus, she said, I'm always driving really fast this thing. It just wants you to go fast. And as far as I'm concerned, this sport wagon was the best design one ever made. It's got tons of room inside. You take off the cover, and believe me, you want the cover, so people can't see inside your trunk and then break your window to steal what's inside it. This didn't come with one. The previous owner had lost it, so I had to buy this online. But it's worth having. Then you pop the seats back and you got tons of cargo room. Now they don't go all the way back here because I got the front seats back. If you move the front seats up, they go the whole way flat down. Brought all kinds of big screen TVs home, lumber, you name it. You can haul a lot of stuff with one of these things. And it's got tons of hidden compartments. Look at this. All kinds of room for putting tools and stuff, so you can have all your junk down there. When you move those seats forward and have it all flat, there's actually plenty of room for sleeping. We took it out once we were camping. It's pouring rain. Well, the heck with getting soaked in a stupid tent. We just put those down and slept in the Matrix. And as I said, they're very zippy cars. They're fun to drive. This 4-cylinder engine, a modified version of it, is in the Baby Lotus, the English sports car. They soup them up to put out more horsepower, but it's the same basic engine they start with. And dependability is the key. I've seen these things, 400,000 miles, original engine, original transmission, and they're still running good. Now, a lot of them did have a couple of recalls. That stupid Takata airbag system, this particular one is still under recall. They keep sending us letters. I'm not letting those guys at Toyota touch my car. And some of the early ones had a recall for the ECM, the main computer. I had one customer who had to get it replaced free, but it didn't cost anything. The car died, she towed it over here. I saw it was wrong, and I said, oh, Toyota fixes that for free. So we called the Toyota dealer. They came and picked it up for free, put a computer in, and away you went, and that was 11 years ago, and it's still running strong. Now, truth be told, they can be a tad ugly. These cool lenses, I bought from some Chinese company on eBay for 65 bucks a piece. They just bolt off and bolt on. You can easily do something like that yourself. Same thing with the back. The original ones are pretty ugly. So I got these things for like 55 bucks a piece. There's many advantages of being pretty much a Toyota Corolla with a lot of interchangeable parts. There's all kinds of aftermarket parts that you can get really good prices on that work perfectly fine. Now, being a Matrix and not a Toyota Corolla exactly, it does have a sportier suspension. You can see the big rear spring-assisted shock in the back. The suspension on these are beefier than the Corollas. Being a motorcycle rider myself, I tend more towards speed and handling than comfort. One must say in these Matrixes, they do have a relatively rough ride. Every time we go on a trip somewhere, it's the Lexus that we take because it rides like a magic carpet ride. You can actually corner a lot faster in the Matrix than you can in the Lexus. You want a sport wagon, as far as I'm concerned, this is the one to buy. Heck, my old 94 Celica with 240,000 miles. It's the same basic 4-speed transmission on it. It's got 240,000 miles, still shifts like a dream. But if you want more zippiness, hey, get a Matrix that's got a standard transmission. They are insanely fast then. And if you really want some speed, get a standard transmission one and put a turbocharged kit. They make bolt-on turbocharged kits for these things. Now, the new version, the 2019 Toyota Corolla hatchback, which is basically just a modern Matrix, it's only available with a non-turbocharged engine. Toyota decided they wanted reliability, engines that didn't burn oil. They didn't want to get in that same fix that Honda did with their CR-Vs, an oil dilution problem because of the turbocharged GDI engine. Toyota's conservative when it comes to building a lot of their vehicles. They don't want to make a mistake and get their customers mad at them. They want reliability above all. Today I'm going to talk about why you should buy a Lexus. But strangely enough, I'm going to start with why you shouldn't buy a Lexus. And that's because they cost too much money. I'm cheap. I would have never bought one in the past, but I got this one for my wife years ago. One of my customers got it from his father. They were tired of it, and I gave him $3,000 for the car, even though it only had 60,000 miles on it. Yeah, it was like 12 years old, but I don't care. I know these things can last. So when it was new in 2002, it was a $34,000 car. So basically I paid less than 1/10 of the original price for a vehicle that I've had customers, yes, 300s, that had 400,000 miles on it. With 60,000 miles, 80% of its lifespan left. I would never buy a new one regardless of the cost because I think they're ugly. I like the old style front. Those new ones with those giant scowling mouth plastic front ends, I think that's one of the ugliest designs ever. And sure, a lot of cars are all copying now that big scowling front grille. People think, oh, that's popular, that's cool. And they go out and they buy something, they want it to look like that. Me, I think it's ugly. I like the old ones. They're better looking. Face it, you want a big in the front of your car, it just looks stupid. Now the reason I love this Lexus is because, hey, I'm getting older. These things are really comfortable and luxurious. Now this car is 18 years old, but the seats, the leather's still in really good shape. It's amazing. And being a Lexus, things hardly ever break. Now, in the interest of honesty, yes, I put lots of parts on this car, but for a rather odd reason. I use it as a test car to test out brakes, rotors, all kinds of car parts. I tell them, send me stuff for a 2002 ES 300. I'll see if your product's any good. And here's something that I found out that kind of surprised even me. A couple years ago, a company sent me brand new front struts for the suspension. So I put them on this car, and at the time the car was 16 years old with the original struts. And lo and behold, it rode much worse with the brand new struts. Now they weren't original equipment struts, they were aftermarket ones. But it rode so much worse with the new ones that I put the old ones back on. So here we're talking about a car with 16-year-old struts that still rode fine. The new aftermarket ones rode worse than these old ones. They can last that long? That tells me they're building these things right. Check inside the door. Made in Japan. There's just something about serious Japanese car manufacturers, and motorcycle manufacturers for that matter. They take it seriously. They keep building the car quality. You don't see that with cars that are built in lots of other countries. No, it's not a race car. It's got plenty enough horsepower with a V6. You can cruise all day long. When we drove to Big Bend, the speed limit was like 85 miles an hour. We did 90 the whole way on cruise control. Didn't skip a beat. It's got the proven ASIN transmission. I changed the fluid a couple of times. That's it. Still shifts like a dream. And sure, I upgraded the headlights, they look cooler, but that's the advantage of a platform like this. A lot of the parts that are newer style will fit on the older ones, especially aftermarket ones. So you can upgrade it if you want. Hey, I'd rather buy $250 worth of headlights than buy a brand new Lexus for what, $45,000, $50,000 these days, and up. But even though it still kind of looks and runs like a new car, the insurance on it is dirt cheap. It's an 18-year-old car. I gotta pay like $500 a year insurance on this thing. Check out the insurance on a new car. If it gets wrecked or stolen and it's a $60,000 car, they gotta put the $60,000 payout. Don't think your insurance is gonna be cheap on that. They got big giant trunks with lots of space. But really the main selling point is luxury, and they can last so long. Many luxury cars, hey, they fall apart. They want you to buy a new one every 4 or 5 years. These things weren't made that way. Take the engine, it's naturally aspirated, doesn't have a supercharger, doesn't have a turbocharger, isn't GDI high pressure injector. Just a plain old V6 fuel injected engine like in a Corolla or in a Toyota pickups. They're known for reliability. They can last a long time. You don't have to do anything to them but change the oil. I'm a fan of the V6 ones. I'm not really a fan of the big V8 ones. Yeah, they're a bit more luxurious, but as they age, those engines are more expensive to work on. They're much harder to work on. Give you an idea, you got a V8 engine. In order to change the starter on a the later model ones, you got to pull the intake manifold off. You're going to spend over $1,000 changing the starter. I changed the starter out in this thing. I think it took me 15 minutes. Yeah, starters are going to wear out in any car, but guess what? I went to AutoZone and bought the starter. It's been in there for 6 years, works perfectly fine. The advantage of this is a lot of it is just Toyota Camry parts. A lot of them are totally interchangeable, and there's a big aftermarket for them. So you can do what you want without having to spend a fortune at the Lexus dealer on their outrageously overpriced parts. And look, even when they're dirty, I haven't washed this thing in 2 weeks, they still look good. Of course, a lot of that depends on the color that you get in a car. If you're gonna get a black car, it's gonna look dirty in 2 hours anyways. But if you get a color like this, it doesn't show dirt all that bad, so you don't have to wash it as much. And like I said, the quality's just there. Take these leather seats. The previous luxury car that my wife had was an old Toyota Cressida, and those seats got so cracked it looked like the Grand Canyon inside. So I covered them with these great New Zealand pure wool seat covers that were like $250 a piece. But one day my wife said, I don't know, something's weird in my car. So I took those New Zealand sheepskin covers off, and inside those Cressida cracked leather seats, believe it or not, there was a colony of ants with eggs and everything. When I pulled it off, they scrambled and ran all over the place. I don't know what the heck they're doing on a mobile car that's driving around, but an entire colony of ants made inside. The leather seats were just not made that well then. But hey, these are 18 years old and they still look great. That's just what I call quality. I know some people are saying, oh, Scotty, how much did Lexus pay you to see how great their cars are? Well, I don't think they paid me anything, considering that I said I would never buy a brand new one, because I think those grills are as ugly as can be. I'm telling you a real life experience from myself and my many customers that have owned these things. And I'd never shell out for a new one. Heck, that kind of money, I'd rather send my grandkids to college than waste it on a car. But if you want luxury in a car that is going to last a really long time and hardly ever break down, and not be all that expensive to maintain either. I mean, you don't go to the dealer, just find a regular mechanic like me that works on it to take care of the thing. Stay away from hybrid Lexuses. My customers with hybrid Lexuses, they loved them when they were new, but then when they got 10 years or older and started to break down, man, the parts cost a fortune for them, because there's really no aftermarket for that hybrid stuff. You're talking dealer then, and the prices will just astound you. But if you're looking for a nice, reliable, long-lasting luxury car, hey, get yourself a Lexus that's got a V6 engine in it. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.